feel about premiering your film in South Florida?
So cool. You guys were such a fun audience. Thank you so much.
So, one of the first questions that I'm going to ask is, you wrote Haunt around the same time as A Quiet Place, that's correct? What were some of the challenges that you had between writing a film with dialogue and a film that essentially doesn't have much dialogue? I mean, is one easier than the other?
First and foremost, writing is never easy. I mean, any filmmakers in the audience, I think, will attest to that. Obviously, the challenges with Quiet Place is how do you convey everything in terms of character and plot without saying a single word. Whereas this, there's a luxury to it, but I think what was challenging about this is how do you get all the chess pieces in the right order? Because you have 6 characters essentially that you have to split off. And so there's a lot of architecture that goes into, even the writing phase where we're trying to figure out what are the different rooms in this haunt, where can you separate everybody, how does it logically make sense, and how do you have your characters try to make smart decisions throughout, the entire film, where typically you can sometimes fall into that trap where it seems like they're making the wrong decision and you're shouting at the screen telling them not to. So even if you're doing that here, we're hoping it's because the character is making the right decision, and the only right decision is to go forward into the darkness.
All right, then.
Should we bring down some members?
We would love to, yes. We would love to bring down the whole And these next 2 guys will be unrecognizable in the flesh here. We'd like to bring down Cheney Morrow, who played Mitch, the ghost. You can really see his face. And then Justin Markson, the clown. We've been making movies with Justin since we were about 15 years old in Iowa, so it's been a treat to work on this with him.
What's your last name, Mitch?
Larry?
Mitch Larry, there you go. Now, the other question I was going to ask is, how did you go about casting the film? Lauren, you're terrific in the film. You're absolutely terrific. For those of you who might not know, Lauren actually has a sister as well who's an actor, and she's in Black Lightning. She plays the daughter of Black Lightning. In the film.
China.
So, how'd you go about with the casting for the film?
It was, we talked to Nancy Nair, our casting director, and we just kept saying, like, Richard Linklater, like, can we find actors of that ilk? And Will Britton, who plays Nathan in the film, is actually in Everybody Wants Some. I don't know if you guys saw that, but it was Richard Linklater's last film, and thought he was just so natural. And Lauren, we cast kind of in the 11th hour on tape. We were just so blown away. And her audition tape was like, they actually went to town with it. It was like, had a lot of atmosphere, and it was like well shot. We're like, damn, this is pretty impressive. So I don't know, it was a mix of different types of actors, but really, I mean, they were also fun to work with.
And I would say for the villain characters, Cheney came in and read for us, and we never knew Cheney. We shot this film in Kentucky and Ohio, and Cheney is a native of Ohio, and he came in, and instantly, as soon as he opened his mouth, we're like, he's going to be one of the villains. We don't know which of the villains he's going to be, but he's creeping us the fuck out. And with Justin, it was really bizarre because, like I was saying, we've known him since we were 15 years old. And in real life, he is the nicest gentleman in the world. And it was really impossible for us to view him as a villain, as the clown. And so we had him audition like 4 or 5 different times, just being like, I don't know, like I just keep seeing the nice guy. I see the nice guy. I don't see like a nefarious clown here. And we used state-of-the-art technology. We used a face app technology where we superimposed like this terrifying mask on Justin's face. And we're like, all right, you might have the part now that we have gotten past that, face of his that's so gentle and nice.
Well, what you'll notice is, I don't know, have you guys ever spent time at horror conventions at all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you met some of your favorite horror icons, these are some of the nicest people in the world.
Yes.
You know, so just because he's a nice guy, he probably can let it all loose and all out when he's playing the villain.
Let's scoot over so everyone's down in the corner. We have a couple of fledgling filmmakers in the audience, and I just wanted to kind of mention that, you know, Scott Beck and Brian Woods did not just kind of break through all of a sudden. You guys worked your way up to the opportunity of directing feature films, and it did not come easy. Do you have any kind of advice for those that really are aspiring to make movies in the audience?
I mean, I think first and foremost, like, just consider the resources that you surround yourself with. Using A Quiet Place actually as an example. A Quiet Place was written not to be produced by Michael Bay, not to star John and Emily, and not to be produced by Paramount Pictures. We wrote that to have in our back pocket because we were like, we could make a version of this movie for, you know, a little bit of money. We had a friend's farm in Iowa that we were planning to shoot that at. We designed it so that it was primarily sound design that would kind of scare the audiences versus, you know, heavy visual effects, which when you have Paramount behind you, you can afford ILM, but we were like, the greatest special effects somebody can have is just working on sound design, and what you don't see is sometimes scarier than what you do see. So that movie was written just with resources that we knew we had access to, and Haunt was the same way. Even though we were very grateful to have a little bit of money behind this project, it was written as something that, you know, you can build a little bit of a haunted house and you can reuse and recycle different rooms and hopefully create something really scary based on how you write the characters and how the characters really react in there. So it's just always figuring out what's in our own backyard and building from that.
What was it like getting direction from these guys? How fun was it to make this film? What was your experience?
It was terrible. No, I was asked this question, I think, on some of my behind the scenes stuff. I think working with you two was my favorite part of filming, because I love movies. I love movies. My dad loves movies, so when I watch a movie, I don't just watch it. Like I really see everything about it. So working with them, especially this really being my first horror film, was a completely different experience from anything else I'd ever done. It was new, it was fresh. They really stretched realism. They just wanted us to err on whatever felt real to us. That's what they wanted. Whether that was the comedic stuff or whether that was the emotional stuff, whatever felt real is what they wanted, and it showed. So it was great.
And we're gonna see another horror film back. You're part of the family now.
Hey.
We want to bring down a special guest. We want to bring down Jonathan Barkin to ask some questions. From Red Central. He actually had the chance to visit the set, so he has some really great insights to share. So go ahead.
I have terrible insights to share. Yes, so as has been explained, I was fortunate enough to go and visit the set during the filming, so I got to see Scott and Brian in action. I got to walk through a lot of the set. It was funny, I actually nudged Ariel at one point. I was like, I walked through. But the scene that I got to see filmed while I was there was actually, Lauren, when you got to die as you were stabbed. So, you know, all of you are very lucky because you got to see that tragic death once. I had to suffer through seeing it, I think, 5 or 6 times. So I was wondering if you could actually just tell us a bit about the art of dying.
Wow, that's a really good question. I love horror. I've watched a lot of horror movies, so I knew when Scott and Brian came to me and were like, so how do you want to die? I was like, well, definitely with my eyes open. I'll open them. So that was fun to do. It was fun to do. I think it's interesting because I remember specifically one time when they were getting a shot of me on the ground and I died and my eyes were open and I heard either Scott or Brian yell, Lauren, hold your breath. And I was like, oh. So I think it's just the mix between, if you do it, I guess the way that I did it, between, I guess, the absence in your eyes and the holding your breath, and nothing being there, as opposed to locking your eyes in on something as opposed to nothing. You know, it was fun to shoot.
I know that when it comes to horror, one of the big things that we see, one of the tropes, is that the killer or the monster is often saved for a big reveal at the end, and that's something that is usually a big scare moment. But here, you actually chose to reveal the monsters pretty early on, and you lingered on them, and that actually didn't take away from the fear. If anything, it elevated it because we kept sticking with them. So I guess for our haunters, what does it take to continuously be scary?
Just watching a lot of great horror movies and learning from the best, you know. Man, I think one thing that came to mind was Philip Seymour Hoffman in Mission Impossible 3. I think that's God bless him, where the voice came from, so I just tried to, and you know, I mean, come on, you watch The Dark Knight, you watch all these great movies, you learn from the best and just hope you can do half as good, but you got better answer.
I grew up in the horror genre all the same, and not only was it fun, I thought it was, you know, it's pretty easy to you know, I love being scared. It's fun to scare other people and to have the opportunity to do it like with a budget and, you know, like gore and blood and stuff. To me, it was, you know, it's like trick or treat. It's Halloween. It's the greatest time of my life. I thought it was fantastic. But it's not tapping into like, you know, being a bad guy. That's just, you know, just to rely on the writing and take it where you need to take it, and it was awesome. It's a very good time.
And being a bad guy.
Yes, and while being a bad guy, maintaining, like, trying to be nice while playing a bad guy. 'Cause I don't think Lauren hates me per se, but yeah, she may have those days off.
Scott, Brian, for two of you, a big part of making a film feel realistic for the actors is a lot of research. And when it comes to making something like this, obviously you're going to want to research haunts, you're going to want to go to them, and potentially you're going to want to take your cast there so they can get a real feel for it. So I'm curious, do you have any funny stories about taking? Lauren's already hiding her face.
I think she's hiding her face. We were shocked to find that most of our cast had never been to a haunted house before, and we were like, what the hell is wrong with you? So we promptly fixed that. We were shooting the movie during Halloween season, so we were able to go to all these incredible haunts in the Cincinnati area, which we're told is where haunted housing ostensibly originated. And so we went to all these amazing houses and watched our actors kind of suffer through the experience of being assaulted by them, and just taking notes and just being like, remember how that felt when the ghost jumped out at you? Like, we would like to capture that.
Let's open up some questions to the audience. Yes.
How much of the gore was practical?
The question was how much of the gore was practical. The answer is as much as humanly possible. Just about every piece of thing, like major like gore money shot was practical, but there was certainly some CG in there. But it was, thank you for asking that. It was important to do as much practical as possible.
Tell us about the decision making and the production that went into those very unique looking masks.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for saying that. Our hope was to design something that eventually would be available for everybody in the audience to buy one day. The mask we always envisioned as, you know, harkening back to the 1940s, 1950s masks, because I don't know what those people were thinking back then if they thought those masks were cute, but they're fucking creepy now. Look at vintage Halloween photos and it'll give you nightmares for years. So our production designer, this incredible collaborator named Austin Gore, he art directed beautiful movies that weren't even in the horror genre. He art directed like La La Land, Spike Jonze's Her, Neon Demon, Midnight Special, like these beautiful looking movies. And so we were very lucky to snag him on this film and just get his like left of center view of what horror is. And he is credited as designing these masks too. And it was just really back and forth about how simple can we really make them look, because we knew eventually the face reveal would be really the creepy part. But you know, in the simplicity, we were hoping that there's something kind of nefarious that you just know there's something evil lurking behind there.
One of my personal favorite masks are the one that they put on her friend when she's is killed by her friend.
Right.
I love that, absolutely love that mask. Yes.
That was hard.
I was wondering how early in production Eli Roth got involved.
How did Eli?
The question was at what point?
How did he?
So Eli came on board. We had a script. We had a rough draft of a script, and one of our producers, Todd Garner, was working with Eli on another project, and Eli was they were just having a conversation, and Eli was saying, "Man, I'd love to do haunted house movies someday. Like I'd love to do something like Toby Hooper's Funhouse or something." And Todd was like, "Well, do I have a script for you?" So he sent him Haunt, and Eli immediately flipped for it. And it was one of the most exciting days of our career, getting that phone call that Eli wanted to meet with us and to talk about the project, because we had been such big fans. And as young filmmakers, his all of his DVDs come with 10 commentaries, and it's kind of on some level that was our film school, was listening to Eli ramble on these commentary tracks. So it was awesome. It was really fun. We sat with him. He was working on Death Wish at the time, and polite enough to show us some scenes, but he was very heavily involved with the script. We thought all of his notes were going to be about we gotta have more eye gouges and heads falling off and all the stuff that he does so well. But he was he was a collaborator throughout the entire script. He really liked to dig into character and talk about character, which in retrospect makes sense, because many of his films do spend 40 minutes with the characters before the horror starts.
Well, one thing I actually do want to bring up, because you mentioned character, and a lot of people probably won't think of this, but one of the very important characters in the film is the haunt itself, is the location itself. What was your experience like with creating that location and working in that location?
We shot this in northern Kentucky. We found an abandoned dairy factory of all places that had these really thick walls, and it felt like the makings of a perfect haunt. You could turn it into a haunted house by itself. But we worked with our art direction team, Austin Gord and Jason Preen, the art director, and just sat down and talked about the entire maze of it. And they created these intricate, blueprints, and from there just started making it come alive. And we always wanted, the mantra behind it was, as elaborate as some set pieces might feel, it needs to feel as if it could be set up in less than a week, and it could be burned down and burn all the evidence with it in a matter of less than an hour. And so there was always kind of that agency behind it to make sure it's leaning into reality, but you still want to deliver the goods, you still want to deliver the spectacle. So as much as we could, just think of homemade gags and what could somebody do feasibly on their own without having a huge budget to afford all of these things and the real life behind haunts.
We talked a lot about, have you guys seen Green Room?
Yeah.
We love Green Room so much, and to your point earlier about revealing the villains earlier, we were certainly taking a page from Green Room about kind of trying to get behind the curtain of the bad guys in a really contained space. We talked about, certainly Hostel obviously is a reference for us. But Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Funhouse, all of the, I'm sure many others. The Game, David Fincher's The Game was a weird reference point for us.
Any plans for a possible prequel backstory, because the house is so interesting?
I mean, if everyone tells their friend, about this movie, we can talk about that.
Haunt 2, still haunting.
But no, certainly, I mean, one thing that we love in storytelling that we did here and we also did in Quiet Places, there is, this rich backstory that should be suggested, but we love just pulling that back. And part of that is because in certain movies, we're you don't need to know everything about everything. It's great to have questions about everything. That's what provokes really intelligent conversation. We talk all the time about how we are actually fans of Prometheus, and I know that may be a divided, thought in this audience, but as much as we love Prometheus, you don't need all that backstory to enjoy Alien. Alien works by itself without knowing a damn thing about anything in the universe. That being said, we love talking in endless conversations, especially with Justin and Cheney and the other villains, about what were these guys doing? Where did they come from? And we're only planting breadcrumbs in one scene here. And there was originally a lot more dialogue that kind of explained the origins of them. But we're let's just pull that back and let you guys kind of breathe life into the story. And we'd love to hear your own interpretations of what it may be, even though we kind of know what we think. So.
We got one right up in the middle above the ramp.
That's kind of what happens when you write two films in a bubble and you're kind of realists like us and you're like, yeah, but neither of these scripts will ever get made. And then all of a sudden they both get greenlit and you're like, oh shit, which one's coming out first? And that nail gang and that shotgun, they're just going to be our signature from here on out.
We have one question left.
This might just be me, but I'm not convinced I am dead.
No, it's kind of left open, right? I don't know.
I'm not convinced I'm dead either.
If you don't mind, I'd love the guy in the orange shirt to ask a question. He came all the way from Iowa to come to this screening. Do it. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think everything that we try to write, we try to make it as visual as possible because when people read these scripts, we want them to see movies, not just blueprints for what a script is. So yeah, like with Quiet Place, that very much was a sparse script, where the script should be at least 90 pages. That was 67 pages, and we would play with fonts. We would put like a single word on one page to emphasize a loud sound, or we would make the font shrink if things were getting quieter, and we would put pictures in there. There's like a Monopoly board in there, like everything that Robert McKee says, do not absolutely fucking do this in your script, and we did, just because we felt it lent itself to the visual journey. There was a degree of that in Haunt, not necessarily as egregious, but we definitely, had colored text so that the geography of the haunt would be apparent on the page. So when they're in the red door room, we had different things colored red, or when they were in the blue corridor, it was blue. So just so that there's a roadmap for people to understand that this is a movie at the end of the day, that's what we try to lean into with any script.